Okay, it's 6 o'clock. We do have another discussion prior to the dog barking, so we'll get started. Okay, so then she'll join us. So this is the regular work session meeting for July 15th for the city of Minnetrista. Present this evening, myself, Lisa Whalen, the mayor, and council present are Kathleen Refkin, Ann McGregor, Peter Vickery, Claudia Lacey, and Director, do I have to list everybody? Okay. Ali Paulfus, Brian Grimm, yeah. David Abel, and then Chief of Police Paul Falls. So, and then also shortly, Sarah Sensala will be here. She's on her way in the door right now. So, we're going to start out with the public notice mailing distance discussion. I'll hand that over to David.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and members of council. It's my understanding that this got brought up as a result of the farm winery request when we went through that conditional use permit process and the public hearing radius that was sent out. Certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there was 2 property owners that expressed concern to a couple council members about that notice not being large enough. As you may recall, we ended up postponing continuing a public hearing, and at the direction of the Planning Commission, we did extend our notice from 500 feet to 1,000 feet for that specific farm winery request. I will add, however, that 1,000 feet did not capture the 2 that I believe, again, correct to those who had the discussions. I think the 2 that were expressing concern would not have been included in that 1,000-foot radius. They did not get the notice for that. So, like I said, it was my understanding that a couple council members requested that we have a discussion about what is the correct notice for these types of things. Standard state statute is 500 feet. That's what we follow for conditional use permits and variances and standard things like that. I do have 2 different scenarios, if you will, that I can show you too that we ran, showing what that might look like with if you were to extend distances with public hearing notices, like how many different parcels that would include for you. So if you wanted to look at that, here's just two addresses that we grabbed in the Ag District, 5185 North Arm Drive. You can see at 500 feet you get 17 parcels, at 1,000 feet you get 40, 1,500 feet you get 69, and then at 2,000 feet you get the 115. Another example, maybe a little bit larger parcels, but they still are zoned ag, is 7760 County Road 26. 500 feet you have 8, 1,000 feet you have 13 parcels, 1,500 you get 25 parcels, and then at 2,000 feet you get 29. So you can see there's quite a difference, in terms of the numbers and what you might pick up. I do have maps if you want to look at that, but generally speaking, this, like I said, is kind of in the center of the city, ag zone parcels that we just grabbed to see what that would look like number wise for that. So, like I said, per the result of the farm winery, bring this forward for discussion to see what, if anything, the council wants to do in terms of public hearing notice radius for different types of land use items.
So I had heard from a number of people so I was at the first meeting, anyhow, from the first meeting that were at the meeting and even others that weren't, that they didn't think that the 500 feet, and you can tell by the numbers that you pulled up, that you get like 8 people or you get 5 people or 6 people. The difference is if you have a developed area, you're going to get those 40 people. But out in the rural area, you're not. You're going to get those 8 to 10. So that's why the reason they extended that, actually the applicant requested to have the application postponed and brought back or whatever. So it wasn't the residents that were complaining about not being noticed. It was because the applicant requested having the public hearing continued. So just kind of for that. But, I don't think it would hurt to go further? I mean, would there be, we might get more people involved, but
This is the first time this has come up. I mean, this is the first time it's come up. I mean, they did figure it out. I mean, if you want, the process worked.
It did.
To that point, I mean, it's noticed, it's in the paper, it's on the meeting agendas for the planning commission, for the council meetings. There's plenty of ways out there for people to look for 5 seconds and see if anything's happening near them. I mean, at some point, the onus is on people to find out if anything is happening. I don't think we necessarily need to send notices to everyone within 1,500 feet of these properties.
But it's not a big deal because, as you can see, 26 or even 40,
Yeah.
it's not a big deal. You have to send notices to, let's say, 10 anyway.
Yeah.
To send out a few more
Well, that
doesn't
was
hurt.
17 instead of 70. That's a lot of.
But you could do 15.
No, 17 to
15.
40.
No, 1,500. This is 1,500.
Oh, you want to go to 1,500?
No, I'm
I'd
just
say
saying like
1,000.
that's what's in here. But that's a lot more people. That's
Yeah.
a lot of more notices. That's a lot more postage. That's a lot of more calls that staff might get that they don't necessarily need to handle.
But I think even the people that were complaining, there were people that said we didn't get a notice and we're neighbors. But even going to 1,000, it wouldn't have affected them. And would it have affected them if you went to 1,500? I just think 500 is not quite enough, but 1,000 is kind of nice. I don't want to open up a can of worms. We don't want to. I mean, not that I want to sneak things by our residents, but I think 1,000 seems fair if you're going to do something on your property. Just
It's your property.
Go ahead.
Oh,
sure.
Can there
Sure.
be different areas where, say,
Right,
you have
you
the
can.
500
Exactly.
notice in a
That's what we're
urban
talking
area?
Yes,
about.
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, but then if we do that, then
Oh,
you're going to have residents
oh, I see
who
what you
go,
mean. Yes.
well, I didn't know my property was zoned this way. They got notices
Oh,
1,500 feet. We didn't get
Most
notices
people
of
know
15.
whether they're in the
Yes.
rural area or in the ag area.
Yes.
But
Most people know that.
That seems like a good compromise.
Yeah.
But,
I'm not talking about in the developed areas that you have to do 1,000
Okay,
feet.
right.
right, but then when someone in development does something that somebody doesn't like and they don't get notice, then they'd be like, well, in this area you send out 1,500 feet. Why do you only send out this in our neighborhood?
I don't think that'll happen, no. Because in that area, you're going to cover probably 40 people on 500 feet. Think about it, a 500-foot radius, we're talking radius. In a developed area, you're going to be hitting at least 40, if not more people.
Right, but what about the 41st that's at 525? He doesn't get it, and other neighbors are talking about it, and they're like, well, I didn't get one. Why in this
And
part of
that's,
town
well,
is it this
you-
distance? and
that's a
this
good
one is
point.
like this?
And the other thing is, in the developed areas, people are closer together and neighbors talk. In the rural area, my neighbors are 400 feet away from me. I don't talk to them very often. I don't have a fence where I go over and have a cup of coffee. You know, it's different. It's a whole different. When we're up at the lake, our neighbors are right next door. We talk to them all the time. At home, we don't talk to our neighbors
Yeah.
very often. We don't see them. Whereas in the developed area, if Joe gets one, but Susie doesn't because she's outside that 500, Joe probably will tell Susie, hey, did you get this notice? No, I'm not in the 500 feet. And the word gets out. The other thing, keep in mind, the Laker is not going to be free, and a lot of people aren't going to take the subscription. So that avenue is probably going to be going away very shortly in terms of notifying. So the only way people are going to be notified is if they take it upon themselves every single 2 weeks, 2-3 times a month, go on the website and look at the agenda.
That seems reasonable. It takes
I
about
don't
5
think
seconds
so.
to look through it. We email them correctly. They can sign up and get the email right to their email of what's on the agenda. Well, look, that's not our fault.
But what's the
Think of that,
what's
like
the
postage is
drawback
going
to
up.
what's the drawback to include? I look at it being more inclusive.
Well,
Yeah.
there's
That's-
the cost.
What would it cost between 17
No, it's not.
versus?
Postage is going up again.
Well, I guess point of clarification, is this just for farm wineries, or are we doing this for everything, for conditional use
For
permits,
everything, it would be
variances?
everything in those areas.
We're not gonna do that.
I think conditional use permits. My feeling is conditional use permits because
But
that's
it,
where
not
you get
rezoning,
not.
introduce
So
permits.
someone building a shed that's bigger than 1,000 square feet is a conditional use permit, and the,
Right.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I think that makes sense.
variances, I don't think that is going to be a huge issue because that only might affect the immediate properties. But this is how I'm thinking. Conditional use permit could affect, I mean, obviously
Well,
not sheds,
what about a
but,
comprehensive plan amendment? That, I
Yeah.
mean, so,
yeah, those I think have to go out further, don't they? No?
everything is 500 right now.
500, it's just for PUDs, we did extend that to a 1,500 for a PUD, for a rezoning to a planned unit development.
That's 15.
Yep,
Mhm. That's already like that.
yep.
Okay.
David, how many residents would, say, in a developed area, would we send letters to in the 500 feet, on average? Like, is it in that same range as, say, the,
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be, I guess I don't know, I'd have to run a number for you.
You don't generally have CUPs for developed areas, do you?
yeah, I suppose that's, I was just curious if it's a similar amount to, say, 1,000-foot notice or
Mhm.
in a rural area.
Yeah, I can do, if you wanna talk amongst yourselves,
Yeah.
let me see if I can.
I mean, it's not a huge cost. Do the numbers. What is the cost difference between sending out 20 versus 100 or 70? I mean, we're talking 50 at 55 cents. You're talking $25, $30.
Aren't stamps like 70 cents starting like this week?
So it's
I mean-
$40.
Right, but it's gonna keep going up. It's not gonna get cheaper.
But we're talking $70 versus $20. So we're talking, a very small amount in order to inform our residents. That's how I view it. Here's what's happening in your neighborhood. If you're interested, here's the issues, or here's the time, here's the date, here's the place.
I just grabbed one in Hunter's Crest at 500 feet, and there's 58 parcels.
Mhm.
It seems like the 1,000 feet is a reasonable one, where you catch people that are directly impacted, but they're not so far away that they're just, bringing up an issue because they read about it. That seems
Right.
like a good
Yeah, 'cause that's what
compromise.
we want to head off. That's what we don't want to have happen.
Yeah, we don't want
Right.
everybody to
Right.
give their input on it. Well, they're quite a ways away that
Because
really
if
aren't
you have enough
impacted.
people, somebody will find fault with something and it just gets out of hand. So, yeah, but I guess for the agricultural aspect, the compromise is fine.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
So you're saying 1,000?
For
Yeah.
the agricultural thing, not for the.
Yeah, not for the development.
No, not the developed
Right,
areas,
okay.
but.
Yeah.
And it'd be actually still less than the developed areas. We don't have a lot of CUPs anyway. I mean, how many CUPs do we get a year? Maybe 3 or 4?
Yeah, it'll vary, but
Yeah.
in the area.
Right. And
So
then,
1,000 feet in the ag and ag preserve for just CUPs.
yeah, I don't think we need to do it for variances.
Right, but there's also comprehensive plan amendment, rezoning, subdivision, and other
Comprehensive
stuff on
plan
here.
amendment, isn't that already 15 feet? 1,500? Rezoning?
Rezoning would be it's a 500, and we got in an adjacent communities for a comp plan amendment.
Comp plan amendment.
Yep.
And comp plans are a little different, but if you do a rezone, yeah, that should probably at least be 1,000. But how often have we done a rezone?
Not very,
Yeah,
not very.
I mean, I can't remember when we've done a rezone.
Well, we take, generally speaking,
For a
we'll take
PUD.
care of them every time we do our comp plan,
Right.
is when we're doing it. So, but normally, I mean, the most common thing would be a rezone to a PUD for a development, and
Right.
there it just kicks in the 1,500.
Okay.
That's
And
mostly
when
what
we do a comp plan amendment, there's all kinds of public, I mean, there's more noticing though. Isn't it required for a comp plan amendment? It goes to the-
with outside agencies
Yeah.
especially, and neighboring communities.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. So comp plan amendment, you're saying, is only 500 feet.
Yeah.
It probably would hardly ever involve the ag or ag preserve district, but then I think it should also be the 1,000. I mean, it's never come up before, but it seems like consistency would be better. What do you think?
It's up to you. I think it worked. So.
The
Well, and
500
that's
before.
the thing, every change
They're
we make,
they're
that's
they're,
another
they're
thing staff
poking
has to think
at
about.
they're finding anything they could to point at the city, and that was one of the things that stuck on the wall. So.
How long has the 500 been forever
Yes.
almost, or don't?
Well,
I mean,
it's the state
Like I
statute.
said, but we don't have very many CUPs in the ag and ag preserve district. That's,
Well, and if it would have been a CUP for a shed over 1,000 square feet, there wouldn't have been a concern. It's what it was for.
Sure, and well, we had the same issue with the house. What is it?
Oh, the solar
house,
Solar.
whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
And people were complaining that they didn't
Oh,
get
get
noticed
noticed,
and so on. So,
Right.
I mean, it's come up a couple times, but again, I agree.
Is that it, just twice that you can remember?
It was too big.
Twice in how many years?
A lot.
15,
Twice in like, well, and
But that's why I'm saying it doesn't matter.
well, but it matters for staff because now they have to check which distance it is and how much they have to send it out. If it's just for the conditional use permit, then when they do the variances, it's only 500 feet. Like you're adding
Well, then do
more on
1,000
staff
for
to do.
everything.
Well, I'm just saying, like no matter what we do, we're adding more on staff's plate.
But it's to make our residents happy.
Twice in 10 plus years, people have complained about it. Like I'm just saying, like
Because they didn't get a notice.
Yeah, but I guess it's back to what's like, what is it about though? Again, back to would they be concerned if it was a shed over 1,000 square feet or
no,
variance?
someone
They
put a
might.
pool in
You don't
it.
know.
So what about changing it sounds like, in my assumption is it's the farm winery was the issue, right?
Mhm.
That was the
It's the
problem.
thing.
An idea of something you could do is change that from a conditional use permit to an interim use permit, which an interim use permit requires 1,500 feet. That's an option. That's the one specific use that was the issue. I know we just went through and issued that CUP, but
Yeah, that's not a good idea. That's a good idea.
I mean, that makes more sense.
That's a good idea.
Versus changing it for everything.
Right.
Well,
so anything from, and I mean, that's kind of what the residents wanted, was an interim versus a conditional use, but we were in mid-game, it wasn't a good time.
Right, you can't change it
to
in
do that
midstream.
at that
Right,
point.
right.
But, I mean, I guess that's what I'm more focused on is that seemed to be the problem, was that particular use, and everyone kind of wanted to do an interim use anyway, so
Okay.
maybe anything that comes in the
IUP.
future would be an IUP and not a CUP.
And we're going to have that question come up in our regular meeting too, for an IUP.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay.
Is
So
that,
it would make more sense to change the farm wineries to an IUP, and that already has a 1,500, and then we don't have to change this
And the-
ordinance specifically.
correct.
Yeah, see,
Correct.
that seems much
There we go.
better.
Correct, because they're only
Good
allowed in
talk,
the
yeah.
ag and ag preserve districts, and all we gotta do is change them from a C to an I. It'd be pretty
Saves on
easy.
ink, right?
David, why didn't you say this 20 minutes ago?
Really smart.
Very good. There you go. There you go.
You had to ask
David, are there-
specifically the right question to get him to tell us all this.
But
David, are
that's-
there-
but
but are
that's
there any
why
situations
discussions-
where
That's
that
why
would-
we have
That's why we
discussions.
have discussions. It's very good.
Is
Well, are there any situations where that wouldn't work? I'm just thinking about, I became aware of this a long time ago when the school district wanted to build a bus barn next to my house, which I, didn't really think that was a good use of the land. But anyway, are there situations like that say changing to an I wouldn't cover? Just so we
What,
really
I
this
think
through.
what you're asking is what else is allowed as a CUP in certain zoning districts that maybe should be only IUPs?
That's right. That's
Okay.
much more succinct. Thank you.
Well, it'd just be back to the building sizes. That probably what triggered that was it was over 1,000 square feet is my assumption, and they probably did, I'm assuming they needed a CUP for that.
It was loud. I don't know.
Yeah.
But see, buildings, you wouldn't want to do as an IUP.
No.
You would do CUPs because you wouldn't want to say, well, in 10 years you have to tear it down. You know what I'm saying?
So are there situations like that then, that we wouldn't be covering then by just going with what we're proposing?
But there might be other instances. Okay, here's another one. What about dog kennels? Those maybe should be IUPs.
Yeah, because they are
Barking.
conditional use.
They are
permits.
CUPs, yeah. Maybe look over the list and see what you would think would be kind of a trigger that would say it should be an IUP versus a CUP. And most of the time, it's because of
Well, horse stables.
What
Horse
are the boat
stables.
storage ones?
those are CUPs.
CUPs.
Mhm.
Well, we don't actually, I mean, the boat storage ones that we have are legal they're legal non-conforming uses, and none of them actually have
CUP.
have CUPs.
They've been there
Oh,
for.
the one's got one because we made him put up the pole barn.
In a wedding ring.
Oh, yeah. We gave him a, yes,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
He'd be the one that has one, yes.
But maybe that would be different things that are going to be when noise or traffic, or maybe
Yeah.
those should be IUPs versus CUPs.
Yeah, it seems like that would be why people would complain if you had
Right.
a bunch of traffic to a yard or any of these other things we're talking about.
And then if it's an IUP, then it has to be 1,500 feet anyway.
Correct.
Okay. All right, are we
Okay.
happy with
Does
that?
that make sense to you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yep.
All right,
Okay, all right.
all right, now we're moving on to dog barking. All right, Sarah, who wants to take this? Paul?
Madam Mayor, Council, I'll be happy to get it started here, and then if it gets technical, I'll hand it over to Sarah. So I think you're aware that this whole process has been going on for months, and we did get some conclusion. So basically, the dog owner was found guilty on 5 of the 7 citations. And so what that does is it triggers I'm trying to stay back from this. It triggers a process where, because there were several violations in a short period of time, that met the criteria to declare that property or those dogs as a public nuisance. And so there's been some discussion about notifying the dog owner of that. The letter has been drafted by our city attorney. It's been printed, signed by me. It's ready to go out, but we didn't want to do anything until after this discussion tonight. So at this point, that matter is resolved. If there continues to be violations, we will continue to handle it by issuing citations for each credible offense. And then secondary to that would be, because they're going to be notified that this is now a public nuisance, that kind of starts the civil process for the city. If we continue to get complaints there, then the city would have another avenue to
Abate.
explore.
To abate.
To abate, correct.
So we don't have to issue more tickets in order to abate the current dogs.
No,
Okay.
that would be the criminal side, and then this is the civil side, the
Right.
nuisance piece.
So we could send them a letter saying, your dogs have been deemed a nuisance, so if we hear any more complaints, we will remove them?
That's essentially what the letter
That's
says.
what the letter says.
So it's signed, it's sitting on my desk, it's ready to be sent by certified mail. But we didn't want to do that before we had this discussion tonight. That doesn't mean the city has to do that.
Right.
It's just by notifying them that it's declared a nuisance, it gives the city the option if they want to do that, if it continues to be a problem.
Okay.
And then we'll bring it back before we take any action, have further discussion, and see how you feel about that, because that would involve, there's some other steps to that we've never gone to this point before, at least not in my time here, which is a couple of years. So this is pretty rare that something would get to this level involving an animal.
Well, it's pretty rare that they don't comply. It's just-
Right.
Yeah.
Have you been getting more complaints while the trial's been going on, too?
I think there's been maybe a couple, but it has definitely changed or slowed, not to the extent that it was. So they were just piling up to the point where 7 citations were issued. There were more than, probably likely, much more than 7 complaints, but those were the ones that we were able to go and verify and then issue citations. So this letter is very clear about what the intent of the city is. And then if the city chooses, if we continue to have a problem, then we'll have this discussion, and then we'll decide if we get a search warrant based on that, and then we can go on the property and impound the dogs. The question then will become long-term, what do we do if they don't comply? What's the next step after that?
So that was my question, I'm sorry.
That's right.
So let's say we abate those dogs and they get new dogs, and those dogs bark. Can we abate those dogs or only the dogs that were there first?
I believe it only applies to this situation, is my understanding. So if they went and got entirely new dogs, we'd start this whole process all over again.
Well, if I may, I got an earful this weekend from the neighbor that people in question just brought in several truckloads of chickens
Yeah.
and roosters.
Yes.
Oh
And
my
the whole
gosh.
time I was talking to the resident, you could hear the roosters in the background, and he said that they crow at night and early in the morning and all day.
So you can get those complaints.
We're getting them all right.
So this isn't a theoretical question. It sounds like the neighbors are, the wits end. So we may be revisiting this, but not with dogs. And does this? I read the ordinance. It sounds like it does apply to any kind of animal. It pretty
Correct.
much covered anything that.
But I don't think
flies.
you can use the dog incidents against the roosters. You'd have to
Right.
start citing the roosters, and then once you get to the 3 times in the 3-month period or whatever it is, then we could declare them a nuisance.
So the neighbors have to speak up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we have to document those
Okay.
complaints.
It's a little different process because we have a very specific ordinance that we can cite under for barking dog, but
Oh.
nonetheless, we would document it and we would be able to eventually declare that a nuisance as well. Although I believe that because a dog is a domestic animal, it's a little easier in court to make the argument that they need to control the animal and keep it quiet.
Right.
It's a little bit more difficult the further outside of that domestic animal you get, because they're going to try and make the argument that these are farm animals. And chickens are not really loud, but roosters can be very loud, and clearly they are because I've heard some voicemails with them in the background. So it's loud.
I have a recording. They sent me. I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, you really have one.
Yeah.
You really have a recording.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
they sent me.
yeah.
Oh, my God.
I'll share it with you if you want. Then does the ordinance, is that citywide, or is it like the rural areas that have more leeway?
Citywide.
Or?
Yes, the short answer is yes, that's citywide, but again, it depends on, when you get to court, the argument is a much stronger one if you're in the residential city lot in a development, where I think the expectation of not allowing that kind of noise ongoing is an easy argument to make. The further outside you get, the harder that argument is to make, especially when you get in front of a judge. So it's not cut and dried as we would like, but,
What's their address again?
I'm sorry.
What's the address again?
The address.
I do not, let's see if I have that.
Do you know it,
Somebody
Peter?
has-
It's on West Branch
It's
Road.
West
West
Branch.
Branch Road, I don't have the numbers in front of me.
I want to say it's 77, I don't know, some,
I apologize, I don't have that in front of me.
yeah. I mean, there's, and the thing is, well, and then this is another issue, and I forwarded the email to Paul and Jasper too with the noise regarding dirt bikes and four-wheelers. And that's come up again. It's reared its ugly head again. And so,
Same property?
on the same property, yeah. And they're basically thumbing their noses at the city and at the neighbor next door, saying, we are going to do whatever we want, and to heck with you. So that's going to be coming up, too, for discussion. I'll talk with Paul and Jasper first and see where we want to go with that. But
Just for reference, the address is 6501 West Branch Road.
6501. West Branch. West Branch. And I know it seems weird, but and if you live out in the country, you realize this. Sound travels further than you think.
Oh, no, that happens around the lake, too. I can
Yeah.
hear what's happening
Yeah.
on the other side of the lake, and I'm
Right.
not even on it. Like,
Yeah.
it's, yeah. I mean, well, this is country, but it's not that far up there.
Well, the neighbor's house is right by the
Yeah.
property line, and
Yeah.
the animal pens are right behind their fence. So they're very close.
Madam
So-
Mayor and Council, I think
yeah.
I just want to add that
Well, there we go.
Can you turn yours off?
Yeah, he's pushing
Yeah.
it right now.
I'm not going to touch that for us. I think the issue here is these folks.
You go, Ally.
I can talk loud enough. I think they can hear me. But
We can hear you.
in this particular case, I think these folks are trying to make this into a working farm to prove their point. They're not doing this out of necessity. So that's the difference. This isn't.
Can you
All
just
of
turn?
them.
Can you turn it off? They're all connected. Maybe just we're almost done here. Can you turn it off and then we'll take a break and then fix it hopefully for the.
So anyway, to my point, I think this situation is very clearly bringing animals in to try and make the argument that they had in the very beginning of this incident. That this is an active farm. When they were told it isn't, that they're just going to no end to try and prove that. So,
Right.
Do they
Right.
have an active farm there?
well, they had a couple of dogs, I think some sheep, and some miscellaneous animals, and now apparently they have a bunch of chickens and roosters, and they're just making the problem worse.
I mean, they only have 3 acres. It's not like it's a farm.
Was that right?
I think it's only 3 acres, isn't it?
Five,
It's
5.12.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, just over 5 acres, and I believe that unfortunately,
Sarah, this is so frustrating because we took them to, or they fought it in court. They basically were proven guilty. All they have to do is pay a $680 fine, and then they go on their merry old way, and they continue to be terrible neighbors. I mean, any recourse the city can do
Can
other
we
than
give them our legal fees? Like,
Well, that's-
'cause they said they were going to come after the city to pay all their legal fees.
well, they
They
lost.
lost.
I
I
don't
know,
think
but
that's
had
how
they
it
won,
works.
Yeah.
can we do the same thing?
No, that's a criminal prosecution matter.
Civil,
How about
we could.
civil?
Civil, we can.
Can we?
Civil, usually you don't get attorney's fees unless you specifically agree that you will pay the attorney's fees. Like in a contract, they'll say, whoever has a dispute about this contract agrees that the loser,
Oh.
they'll pay the other side attorney's fees. And we actually usually discourage that because our fees are so low that if the city had to pay the other side's attorney's fees, it would be paying like really high fees. So yeah, attorney's fees are not common in civil proceedings. And-
Well, I do still want to look at that fee schedule that we talked about before.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think this would be the test case for that. Unless
Why?
you want a lot of legal fees. Or can create some bad law for this.
But can they have a working farm on that property with the size of their property?
5 acres?
Is that,
Do they need a CUP?
is that
or an
allowed?
IUP?
Farm activities are allowed, farm animals. I mean, the only thing that, if they do horses, they'd run into they need so much land for pasturable acreage, but we don't, that's just for horses. Not in sheep or,
So it doesn't matter if
So
they have
we should-
sheep and goats or anything like that.
So we should look at that ordinance and add land requirements for chickens, roosters, sheep, and other things. I mean, that doesn't seem like a big enough property to do that on.
people are trying to do it in your neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that might be.
More reason to limit. No, you have X amount of acreage.
I mean, generally, most people would say 5 acres is enough to have chickens, you know.
Yeah, I would think so too, yeah.
But, so you'd have to say if you have to have more than 5 acres, or you have to have 5 acres, but you can only have X number of chickens. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'd have to limit the number, because otherwise they could do how do you say, hundreds of chickens.
And roosters, which I believe is more of the issue.
Yeah, they're the problem, yeah.
Some of them, now, I might be wrong, but Sarah, do you know, some ordinances in some cities say you can have chickens but not roosters.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's
So-
sort of like in the,
Usually that's in a more residential area.
Or maybe you say
Like in
you
Minneapolis.
can have X number of chickens and only 1 rooster.
Yeah.
You know, you could limit the number of roosters, maybe that would help.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just picturing a property that continues to get more and more farm animals without horses, like, and just becomes a huge nuisance. And I mean, the property down here already has things that break free frequently. So,
There's a parking lot.
Well, staff, what do you think?
what about the wood? Yeah, that would be
And then Paul, I mean, you guys have to deal with the nuisance and with the calls. Do you see, you think it would be worth looking into some of our ordinances in terms of limiting certain things?
Well, I think, it's probably more of a legal question, but even if we were to change the ordinance, I don't think it would retroactively apply to them.
Why not?
I don't know the answer to that question. I know
Sarah?
others have not, so.
I think I guess they could make a legal non-conforming use argument that they had this and it's legal at one point. No, but that's a zoning matter, and I don't know if it's not part of our zoning ordinance. I don't know if they can make that argument. But I don't know how you police how many animals they have on that property.
Sounds like the neighbors will take pictures for us.
Oh, yeah.
From a legal, from a public safety perspective, I think this isn't a widespread issue, so.
Right.
I'm more focused on what can we do to get through to this property owner? Are we a horrible neighbor?
Yeah.
This isn't just one person calling about you, and you're making matters so much worse. I mean, pretty soon, they could have bought a new place, a larger place, with all the legal fees they're paying to fight this ridiculous matter. So, I don't know, obviously what we've said so far is not getting through. I'm hoping the letter will help, but my guess is they've tested everything to date, so they'll test that as well.
Yeah.
And we'll just be vigilant and continuing to do everything we can. And we may have to adapt a few things to address specific bizarre issues that we've never dealt with before.
Well, I think for tonight's discussion, we agree you should send the letter.
Yeah.
Okay.
That doesn't bind the city to do anything
Right.
further, it makes that necessary notification so the city has options should the problem continue, and we'll have lots more discussions if it does.
Okay. And then, is there anything else you want to bring back regarding this chicken issue or rooster issue?
That's relatively new, so we don't have really any data yet.
Okay.
So maybe once I assume that neighbors will start calling us directly for that.
Okay.
And I think under the ordinance, you can cite.
Calling everyone but us.
Okay. Well, then,
Oh, yeah.
if you talk to the
I'll tell them
neighbors
they
or...
have to speak up.
Yeah.
I would think in general, just knowing the rural area and what the calls we get, that if you start messing with the animal numbers, that you're gonna ruffle more feathers per se than you might want to, given you got just one situation here, because most people do comply,
Yeah.
and they move out here for that, and they're on larger parcels, and it's
Right.
not an issue, and that's what they want, so.
They're good neighbors and we're not getting them.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so then we'll go down the nuisance path with the dogs, and then we'll go down the nuisance path with the chickens if need be.
But
Right.
there's no teeth in any of this if they just keep becoming a nuisance. They just,
You can sign them, and then, eventually you can take them. And then you can actually the city can take ownership of the animals. And then it's like,
We might have a petting zoo.
I don't know what you want to do.
Like a 3-strike rule or something. I guess there.
Okay, all right. Well, it's too, so I think you
Send the
have
letter.
your marching orders, so we will adjourn for now so that we can take a break, so we can hopefully fix this. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Claudia seconded that. Kathleen first. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 5-0.